Arthur, a disgraced journalist now driving for a living, kept his head down as the man's hateful words filled the bus. He watched the father shield his small child, a scene of quiet dignity against a backdrop of raw prejudice. Arthur's phone was recording from his shirt pocket, a reflex from a past life, but as the aggressor stormed off, Arthur knew this couldn't just be another deleted file. It had to be a headline. We've all witnessed moments that made us uncomfortable, moments we wish we could unsee. But what happens when you're the only one in a position to do something about it? Let's explore that choice together in today's story. The stale, circulated air of the number 14 bus was thick with the scent of damp coats and the low rumble of the engine. Arthur sat 2 rows behind the family, his gaze fixed on the gray, rain-streaked window, trying to ignore the world as he usually did. This bus route was part of his new life, a monotonous loop of stops and starts that was a world away from the deadlines and bylines that had once defined him. Then, a voice cut through the calm. It was loud, sharp, and full of a sour aggression that made everyone in the vicinity flinch. "You people need to learn how to control your kids," the voice boomed. Arthur looked up. A large, red-faced man in a black jacket stood over a family of 3. One man, likely the father, held a small boy of about 4 on his lap. The child had been babbling happily moments before, but was now silent, his face buried in his father's chest. Another man, perhaps an uncle or older brother, sat beside them, staring intently into a paper grocery bag on the floor, as if the answers to the universe were nestled between the celery and a carton of milk. The aggressor, a man Arthur would soon know as Keir, wasn't done. "This is America. We speak English here," he spat, though the family hadn't said a word in any language. "Always taking up space, making noise." Keir gestured wildly, his presence sucking all the air out of the bus. The other passengers stared at their phones, the floor, anywhere but at the scene unfolding. Arthur felt a familiar, bitter taste in his mouth, the shame of inaction. His fists clenched in his lap. But what could he do? A physical confrontation would solve nothing. He was a 45-year-old out-of-shape rideshare driver, not a hero. But then, another instinct kicked in, a ghost from his past life. His hand moved to his chest, and with a subtle press of his thumb, the screen of the phone in his shirt pocket came to life, its camera lens pointing directly at Keir. The red recording light was a tiny, secret act of defiance. He filmed as the father, Mr. Kim, adjusted his hold on his son, pulling the boy tighter, turning his own body into a shield. He didn't speak, didn't look up. His dignity was a silent, powerful rebellion against the ugliness being thrown at him. The man next to him remained frozen, his knuckles white as he gripped the grocery bag. Keir continued his tirade for another block, his words a stream of baseless, hateful accusations. Finally, the bus slowed for his stop. "About time," he muttered, giving the family one last glare before stomping toward the exit. As the doors hissed shut behind him, the tension on the bus slowly deflated, leaving a residue of awkward silence. The family sat still for a long moment. The little boy, Leon, finally peeked out from his father's coat, his eyes wide and confused. Arthur knew this was his chance. This was the moment where he could offer some kind of help, some small tool for justice. He stood up as the bus approached their stop and moved toward them, his heart pounding. "Excuse me," he said softly, trying not to startle them. Mr. Kim looked up, his face a mask of weary caution. "I'm very sorry that happened to you," Arthur said. I got the whole thing on video. His face, everything he said. You should take this to the police." He held out his phone, a tangible offer of evidence. Mr. Kim looked at the phone, then at his son, then back at Arthur. A flicker of something, maybe fear, maybe just exhaustion, passed through his eyes. He gave a slight shake of his head. "No, thank you," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "It is over now. We do not want more trouble." The man beside him finally looked up and nodded in agreement. "Please," he added, "just leave it." Arthur was stunned. He had expected relief, maybe even gratitude, but he saw only fear. They were afraid that reporting it would only invite more conflict, more attention, more pain. It was a rejection born not of anger, but of a deep-seated desire to simply survive and be left alone. The bus stopped, and the family quickly gathered their things and shuffled off without another word, disappearing into the drizzling afternoon. Arthur sank back into his seat, the phone feeling heavy and useless in his hand. He had tried to help, but his first attempt had failed completely. He was left alone on the bus with his recording, a silent witness to an injustice that the victims themselves were too afraid to fight. Back in his small apartment that evening, the smell of reheated coffee filling the air, Arthur couldn't shake the image of the family. He replayed the video on his laptop, the raw audio of Keir's voice filling the quiet room. He saw the incident with a clarity he hadn't had in the moment. He saw the subtle tremor in Mr. Kim's hand as he comforted his son. He saw the way the boy flinched at Keir's shouting. This wasn't just a man having a bad day. It was an act of deliberate cruelty aimed at making a family feel small and unwelcome in their own city. Deleting the file and honoring their wish for privacy felt like being complicit. It felt like walking away. It was the kind of thing the new Arthur, the rideshare driver, would do. But the old Arthur, the journalist who once believed his words could make a difference, wouldn't let it go. He knew what he had to do. If the family wouldn't act, he would. He paused the video on a clear shot of Keir's face, a sneer twisting his lips. He took a high-resolution screenshot. For the first time in 3 years, he felt a flicker of his old self returning. This was a chase. This was a story. He opened a browser and began to dig. He used a reverse image search program, a tool he'd used countless times to identify sources or verify photos. The program churned for a few minutes, sifting through billions of images online. Nothing. He tried another program, then another. Finally, after nearly an hour, he got a partial match. It was a tagged photo from a company picnic 5 years ago, posted on the public Facebook page of a catering business. The caption read, "Great time serving the folks at the Apex Logistics annual BBQ." In the background, blurry but unmistakable, was Keir, holding a beer and laughing with a group of men. It was the thread he needed. He searched for Apex Logistics in their city. It was a large, regional distribution warehouse located in the industrial park on the outskirts of town. A quick search of their public employee directory was a dead end, but Arthur was persistent. He found a handful of employees on LinkedIn who listed Apex as their employer. He started scrolling through their connections, looking for a face that matched the man from the bus. And there he was, Keir O'Driscoll. His profile picture was a smug selfie taken in a car. His job title, Senior Shift Manager at Apex Logistics. The first small win felt like a jolt of electricity. He had a name and a workplace. The anonymous monster from the bus now had an identity. Arthur's first instinct was to go to the media. He still had the number for his old editor, a man named Frank Baxter, who had been both his mentor and the man who ultimately fired him for a story that went south. He hesitated, his pride warring with his purpose. Finally, he dialed the number. "Baxter," the gruff voice answered. Arthur took a breath. "Frank, it's Arthur Pence." There was a pause. "Arthur, been a while. What do you want?" Arthur quickly explained the situation, the incident on the bus, the video evidence, the positive identification of the man and his employer. "It's a clear-cut hate crime, Frank, and it's on video. It's a powerful story." Baxter was silent for a moment. Arthur could almost hear him swirling the lukewarm coffee in his mug. "Listen, Artie," he said, the old nickname feeling like a fresh wound. "It's a guy yelling on a bus. It's ugly, sure, but is it a front-page story? The cops won't do anything unless the victims file a report. The company will just say he wasn't on the clock. It's a dead end. We can't run with it." The dismissal was cold and immediate. To Baxter, it was a business decision. The story lacked the official elements, a police report, a lawsuit that would make it newsworthy in his eyes. The system he once belonged to had just become another wall. Arthur hung up, the feeling of hope quickly souring into frustration. He was on his own. He looked back at Keir's profile, scrolling through his public posts. It was a predictable collage of angry political memes, complaints about customer service, and vague, aggressive comments. This wasn't a man who had lost his temper once. This was a man who lived in a state of simmering rage. The thought of letting this man get away with it, of letting him continue to believe his behavior had no consequences, was unbearable. Deleting the video was no longer an option. For 2 days, Arthur wrestled with what to do. He had a name, a workplace, and crystal clear evidence, but no official path forward. The family wanted to be left alone, and the media wasn't interested. Every instinct he had as a journalist told him that a story this volatile needed to be handled carefully through proper channels. But every channel was closed. He felt a deep sense of responsibility, not just to the Kim family, but to anyone else who might cross paths with Keir O'Driscoll. He thought about the risk. What if Keir found out who he was? What if he faced legal trouble for distributing the video without consent? The fears piled up, threatening to crush his resolve. The final test came on the second night. He was scrolling through a local community forum online when he saw a post from a woman complaining about aggressive drivers near the industrial park where Apex Logistics was located. A thought sparked in his mind. The community. He didn't need a major newspaper. He had a direct line to the people who lived and worked in the same city as Keir. This was his final hurdle, to step out from the shadows of his failure and act publicly, consequences be damned. He created a new, anonymous social media profile. His hands trembled slightly as he uploaded the video file. He wrote a simple, factual caption, stripping out all emotion. Incident that occurred on the Route 14 city bus, September 10th, around 3:30 p.m. The man shown is Keir O'Driscoll, a manager at Apex Logistics. He stared at the post button for a full minute. This was the point of no return. He clicked it. For the first hour, nothing happened. Then, a few comments trickled in. That's awful. I can't believe this. Then, the shares started. 10, 50, 100. By the next morning, it was in the thousands. It was like watching a fire catch. The video was everywhere. Local news blogs picked it up. Radio hosts were talking about it. The comments section was a tidal wave of outrage. People started calling Apex Logistics directly, demanding to know what they were going to do about their manager. The company's Facebook page was flooded with one-star reviews and links to the video. The pressure was immense and building by the minute. What Baxter had dismissed as a non-story had become the biggest story in the city, all because ordinary people were horrified by what they saw. Arthur sat in his apartment, watching the digital storm he had unleashed. His phone buzzed. It was a link to a live news feed. A local TV station had sent a reporter to the Apex Logistics warehouse. And then he saw it. 2 police cars pulled into the parking lot, lights flashing. The officers walked calmly into the building, past rows of forklifts and shrink-wrapped pallets. The camera zoomed in as they emerged a few minutes later. Between them, his face a mixture of confusion and fury, was Keir O'Driscoll, his hands cuffed behind his back. They led him past his stunned co-workers and placed him in the back of a squad car. The news crawl at the bottom of the screen read, "Local manager arrested on suspicion of hate crime charges following viral video." Arthur let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. It was done. Justice hadn't come through the proper channels. It had come because one person refused to look away and a community refused to let it stand. A week passed. The story faded from the headlines, as stories do. Keir was out on bail, awaiting trial, but he had been fired from his job immediately. The world moved on. Arthur's life, however, had shifted on its axis. One morning, he found an email in his inbox. The subject line was, "Your video." It was from the editor of a small, independent online journal focused on social justice stories. They had traced the original video back to his anonymous account and through some digital sleuthing to him. They weren't angry. They were impressed. The email was short and to the point. It spoke of his courage and integrity, and it ended with an offer, a freelance position writing long-form investigative pieces. They wanted him to tell the stories no one else would. Arthur read the email twice, then a third time. A slow, genuine smile spread across his face. He typed back a single word. Yes. His days of driving in circles were over. He finally had a new story to write. Arthur wrestled with whether to respect the family's wish for privacy or to pursue justice for them. Do you think he made the right call by releasing the video against their initial wishes? I'd be interested to read your thoughts in the comments. If this story resonated with you and you appreciate tales of everyday people facing extraordinary choices, consider hitting that subscribe button. It lets us know we're on the right track and ensures you won't miss the next story we have to share.